Good evening, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I'm David Harris, class of 2017, and thank you for joining us for the March installment of NextGen Presents. Over the past year, graduates have told us they want more professional development, more mentorship, and more real-world insight from fellow Falcons. That feedback continues to drive this series. Tonight, we turn to cyber, a field that sits at the center of national security, business risk, and technological change. You'll hear from three graduates with distinct perspectives across industry, leadership, and entrepreneurship. With that, we'll kick things off. And as always, go Falcons, beat the Goats, and beat the Mules. Over to you, Mike.
All right. Thank you, David. And thank you all for being here. Our goal tonight isn't a technical deep dive. It's a practical conversation about how careers in cyber actually unfold. We'll look into what sparked interest, what prepared these leaders well, what challenged them in transition, and where they see the field going next. We're joined by Tony Seibert, class of '89, managing partner at Cosm Group. David Merritt, class of 2002, senior strategist at CrowdStrike. And Partha Naidu, class of 2016, co-founder at Kenzo Security. Tonight, we'll spend about 35 minutes in a curated discussion, followed by audience Q&A, and close with a short rapid-fire round. I'll direct questions intentionally to draw out different perspectives and help us cover meaningful ground. So let's begin. Okay, guys. Thanks again for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing today, what initially sparked your interest in cyber. Tony, how about we start with you, followed by David and then Partha.
Hey, great. Thanks, Mike, and good evening to all. Thanks for having me on board. A little bit about myself. I'm out of Atlanta, '89 grad, as Mike mentioned. My background was in the special operations world. I was in special ops before. I guess it was cool to be in special ops. I went through selection and did some interesting work with some really cool units. What got me interested in cyber was an extension of what I was doing. A brief story, being the class of '89, we were the first class to get computers. We were not issued. Actually, we had to buy computers. And so I doubled down as a dually and on my credit card bought the first computers that we got, 8086s. This is old school now for everybody. 8086s, Zeniths with CRT monitors and dot matrix printers. And I went and bought that computer, went into debt to do it. I borrowed money for my folks to do it. But I ended up renting it out because nobody else was buying computers. Everybody kind of chuckled to see what is this thing? And so I ended up renting it out and did pretty well as an entrepreneur there at the academy. What got my interest in cyber specifically was as we were transitioning in the special ops world and seeing how technology was impacting the battle space. We started to get practical on saying, hey, how do we influence technology and what can we do with technology to make a difference, especially at the warrior level?
Hey, I guess it's over to me. Hey, good to be here. Good evening, everyone. I'm David Merritt, class of '02. We had computers for quite a while when I showed up. Maybe I'm one of the last classes to have desktops. I think laptops came out soon after. But yeah, I'm a strategist at CrowdStrike, and all that means is I bring clarity of vision and direction to all the super nerds building all the technologies for the CrowdStrike platform. Because, you know, when your head's down working on something, sometimes you lose track of what you're building it for. So strategists help there. But I fell into cyber. I was a developmental engineer. I had a computer engineering degree. I was doing program management. And then I took an assignment to San Antonio and happened to work at a top secret cyber unit. And it was there that I learned how adrenaline fueled it felt to engage the adversary, to engage nation state actors who are actually trying to do us harm. I assume it feels a little bit like what other operators and pilots and ground pounders feel. But, you know, I got a little taste of that and really love cyber. So I hung around in the Air Force, and I'm still doing cyber today. Over to you, Partha.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. My name is Partha. Honestly, I didn't really have a huge interest in cyber. I was a computer science major, And I think cyber was like the closest thing that was available in my career field to computer science. So I kind of took that. Worked out pretty, well for me. Started my career first unit was same one from David, defensive cyber operator at the Air Force Computer Emergency Response Team out of San Antonio. So like 400-person squadron, a lot of really cool things. But the cool part and lucky part for me was that it was very similar to how the civilian world kind of looked at cyber at the time, and kind of very much like a one-to-one kind of translation of like the work experience that I was getting to what the civilian world was kind of expecting as well. That being said, we used a lot of different kind of tools that were very commercial off the shelf, but still everything was kind of broken. So felt that as a young lieutenant, I raged against the machine and tried to fix it. So basically proposed a new kind of way of doing things and got funding. Of course, they sidelined me because I'm a lieutenant at the time, and they would never let a lieutenant run such an important project. In the meantime, I was getting my master's in machine learning, so a lot of data analytics was kind of my background. And eventually at the 5-year mark, I had the opportunity to kind of separate. So I went to New York. I wanted to go party as a single dude. And then I eventually got a job at product management inside Datadog, which was kind of building the NextGen like security operations tools and everything like that. Did that for a while. Also learned like what it means to actually operate and build a security product and build a product in general, and build a business from kind of like revenue and like marketing and all that kind of components and stuff. Did that, went over to CrowdStrike, similar to David, for a few months. And then I had the opportunity to kind of co-found and start a company with my co-founder. So we got venture backing and funding to kind of go do this. And it's been a couple of years, and here we are. Now I think cyber is actually pretty dope. I think it's very niche and quite challenging to solve. And there's still a lot of room for innovation and kind of opportunities for experimentation. So yeah.
That's great. Very cool, folks. Very cool. So David, this one's kicking off to you first, and then we'll go over to Partha and then Tony. So second question here. What skills from the academy or active duty prepared you most for your role today?
All right. Partha did such a good job introducing himself. I feel like I left out some things. So I did 20 years active, then retired, then I went into the private sector, just in case that, others identify in the crowd. But skills from the academy, two jump to mind. And I've told my students this because I did teach at the academy for a little bit. One of them is pace of life. Like when you get used to the academy pace of life, life after the academy doesn't quite hit the same. Like meaning you're used to a pace that far exceeds almost all of your peers you'll ever interact with, unless you meet other academy grads out in the field. So pace of life was definitely a big help in terms of just adjusting in the active duty Air Force, but more importantly in the private sector. And then the other thing is, how do you do peer leadership? Because we were just a bunch of kids leading other kids at the academy, and we all saw bad examples of how that plays out. But what you may not realize, or maybe some of you already have, is the skills you need to lead your peers, like helping them succeed and earning their trust and gaining some credibility with them. That turns out to be worth quite a bit. It's really impactful to have in the private sector in a leadership role, or whether you're working with a superior or even subordinates or peers. It definitely applies in the private sector.
All right, Partha.
Yeah, so I think for me, at its foundation, it's like grit, determination, perseverance. Like startups are really hard, and failure is like a constant thing. But I always tell myself like 10 times, literally 10 times a day, this is still not as bad as dual a year at the Air Force Academy. And that really does kind of just like get me through it, right? Because like survived worse. But other things like that, similar, like when I was working at Datadog, a lot of incredibly smart, brilliant people graduating from like MIT, Waterloo, like Harvard, that were all like my peers. And we would have to be presenting directly to like the CEO on business metrics, or like why our product is not doing well or doing poorly. And he was French, so he was very blunt about like how he would provide criticism or feedback on like our slide presentation or something like that, right? And afterwards, they would be freaking out and everything like that. And I'm like, brother, like I've had Marine Corps colonels like screaming at me with veins popping off their head. Like that was a great meeting. Like we're fine, right? But from like more of a tactical execution perspective, I think like operational planning, team building, and mission focus is incredibly important. Like how do we prioritize when things kind of like are happening? And then as kind of David mentioned, like ops tempo, like it's just another day for us, right? Other things, I think like communication. Like I look back on like what were the most important classes in the Air Force Academy for me. I actually go back to like the 4 language classes and communication classes that we had. It's very underutilized to be able to effectively communicate both like vertically and horizontally in like a concise manner. And also in the military, when we're working with like colonels and generals, they don't have the time. Can you synthesize like this very complex or technical problem into bullet points that they can digest and make a decision on? And that is almost like one-to-one identical to the civilian world as well. So much of that, like I would not be able to do what I do if it wasn't for so many of those lessons learned when I was there at the Air Force Academy, and as well as as an officer in the Air Force.
Nice, Tony.
Hey, those are David and Protha. Those are all great, and I would agree with every single one of those. Some of those I would have said if I would have been first up on the standing in the door there. But I would add a couple of things to kind of maybe bridge some of those, and that is, it's really important your network. I think some of your classmates and even as you progress in your active duty career, and to David's point, a little bit more of my background, just for context. I was in about 10 years. And then I separated, went to grad school. I started a number of companies, and I was very fortunate on exit strategies on those. Was in consulting for a number of years, and then had my own business after that. So I've seen kind of a gamut. And then I went back in after 9/11. I got a phone call from some interesting folks saying, "Hey, you got all these skills. Can you help us out?" And of course, we don't even finish that discussion. You know what happens. And so I did 2 combat tours in Iraq and some time in Afghanistan on the ground with folks. So I was essentially in charge of helping leverage air power with Navy folks and Army folks. So from that context, I would say resilience is really important, and being able to shift, being able to, Protha, you mentioned the mission focus, but when the mission changes, being able to be, as we used to say, rigidly flexible, to be able to move and pivot because things are changing so quickly, as we're seeing what's happening right now on the other side of the pond there. And then the other one I would say is being ruthlessly self-assessing, being able to self-assess yourself and being able to take feedback, and working with high performance teams that when you get that feedback, you're not taking it personally, because it's about making yourself better and being able to contribute from the team standpoint. So those are the key things. There are others, but I think it complements, hopefully, Protha, what you and David mentioned as well. Thank you.
Great stuff, guys. Great stuff. All right, Partha, you're going to be up first for this one, and then over to David, and then Tony again. So what should graduates be doing prior to separation to position themselves for the best civilian cyber opportunities?
Yeah, I think it really depends on what you want to do. So I think a lot of people misconstrue working as a cyber role as only being like hey, I have to be an analyst on the keyboard doing something like that. There's so many more dimensions to like a cyber company, like for example, CrowdStrike, where David works, that like people don't know about, like marketing or program management or hiring and like talent assessment, retention. There's so many different types of roles in that kind of capacity. Now, let's assume for a second that a lot of people are more interested in the technical side, right? Every one of these kind of roles specifically, I would recommend you having to be technical. In this like new age, having like leadership as your one skill set, or like, hey, I want to be a project manager, program manager. With like the advent of AI and like kind of the agentic world, I know we're going to maybe get to a question about that down the road. Like you got to be a little bit more technical. I was lucky because I was a software engineering background, or a computer science background. I got a machine learning master's. So I'm very privileged in a lot of ways to have made those decisions in this new kind of world. But like coding boot camps, technical certifications like AWS Cloud Practitioner or agentic AI certifications, now they're starting to come out a little bit. But in addition to that, just kind of playing around with yourself, like building it on your own kind of side, right? But for me, like when I was still making the transition out into the civilian world, I had to grind. Like I studied maybe like 60 hours for each of my interviews. And it would just be like, I had like 100-page doc that I wrote and I would memorize it. Everything, like, I don't know what like an API is exactly. Let me go do that. I like looked at like interview textbooks and everything like that, right? So even then it was like a huge leap for me to kind of have to go do that. And there's like, you can't really get away from just putting the work in. Like the network might get you an interview or the initial hiring call or the recruiting call, right? everything after that is going to be on you to kind of present yourself in that capacity.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Nice.
it's funny how different my answer is going to be, which I think just shows like the value from having, you know, us 3 different generations in the call. So I didn't think seriously about the civilian sector until, you know, 20 years in. You know, I'm in my young 40s trying to figure out what it is I'm going to do with the second chapter of my life. So the things I had to think through, and this was only in the last few years, the things that helped me were having an opinion about like the type of company you want to go to and the type of role that you want. Like I had the luxury of options, right? Because the Air Force made me go through so much. So I had a lot of skills to bring to the game so that I had some luxury of choice. So having an opinion about type of company, like I'm talking about large publicly traded company versus a private smaller company, big or small company, government. Do you want to do DoD work or government work, or do you want to do only commercial work? Those are all important because that like takes you down different paths. And the type of role that you want, it would be, in the very least, it would be good to position yourself as either a people leader or an individual contributor. So for me, I came out the door saying, I want to work at a large public company and I want to be a people leader. So that just helped me like narrow down at least what I said about myself. Because initially I was saying, oh, I can solve any problem. Just like hire me and I'll help you figure out how to use me best. No one's going to listen to that. Right. So you got to show up with an opinion. You got to show up with at least a first thought about what you should be doing. And then on social network, I was disappointed by how much I needed my social network. And I've heard this from other people who have a larger social network that if you don't use it, you're just hurting yourself because you get like, I don't know, 1% of callbacks on cold applications, maybe less. And then you get probably greater than 50% callback on a warm handoff. And that, you know, for better or for worse, that's just how humans work. So if you're still in and you got time to intentionally try to strengthen some relationships or make some new ones, I think it's not a bad idea. And when you talk to your social network, just be honest. Like, hey, I'm hitting the market soon. Help me understand what kind of roles or companies I should be looking at. That way it doesn't put pressure on that person you're talking to find you a job. They can easily like booger flick you to someone else if you're just asking for help, just figuring out what kind of role you should go for. So those things help me.
All right, Tony.
Well, I get the easy order because I get to, again, bridge some things. David, those were right on, and Prof, your perspective. A little bit of context from my side. When I got out, it was late 90s, and you know we had the Transition Assistant Program, or TAP, I think is what it's referred to as. I would tell you, it's a disappointing program. Very candidly, I'm a candid person. I'll say it respectfully. It's tough to get career advice and transition advice from people who are civil servants who never had to do a transition advice before. So they're well-meaning. Don't count on that. It's out. If you need to be thinking about your transition, you need to be doing it at least 6 months ahead, and maybe a year out, because things are moving. The cycle, the OODA loop is so quick, and the things are changing. The people, processes, and technology are changing very quickly. And let me tell you, I'm very passionate about the transition because we had nothing during that time, and we had to, we were out there trying to find stuff. The best things we could get in transition were, hey, you're a military guy, we're going to put you in the sales role because you're, to David's point, you're a general problem solver, you're a go-getter, you're a mission guy, so we'll put you in the sales role. And there's nothing wrong with sales. It's an honorable profession. I would make the argument that you should learn about sales. I know my stereotype was, hey, sales is cheesy and all that, but we're all selling at all times. Just do it authentically and do it with passion, and it's going to come natural. But there is a system and process to that. The other component, so get with somebody, start leading the target, so to speak, with other folks that have been successful. We and I say all 3 of our generations here and others, we want to help anyone to make the transition. I do not want to see anyone having to go through the same brick walls that I had to do. I will share the information. I think network is super, super important. And this is not about, hey, how you doing? I need to get a job. No, this is one key word I think that I missed in my last answer that I want to go back to. And that is one of the things from the Academy is trust. Trust is hugely important. Mike and I met in my role as a senior partner at a global consulting firm. I was serving him, And we had never met before. And you know what? We kicked it off because we had that trust and we didn't have to do any backpedaling or anything to do bona fides, as we used to say in the field. So make sure you're leveraging that trust in as authentic way as possible, because you will need to pay that forward when it comes your turn to somebody else. That's really, really important. And very candidly, as an academy, we do not do a good job in our networks. West Point is fantastic. Naval Academy, fantastic. But we can do a better job. So let's start today. I'm offering, I want to help anyone who wants to do it. Please make, and I don't speak from this, just some guy with a lemonade stand doing this stuff. I've helped my network, and I'm telling this to everyone, not to impress you, but to impress upon you how it works. Even 3- and 4-star generals, even senior listed advisors on the NCO side, when they have to transition, it's a new world for them. They don't even have good transition. I mean, it's better than the regular folks. So I work at that level with folks to help them transition. So I'm here to help out. I think Pratha and David, you would echo, and speaking for you guys. This is what this network is about. Truly doing these things and not just talking about them. So hopefully those things were helpful.
Yeah, Tony, that's great. I was going to go there too. I'm glad you went there. It's grads helping grads. You called out West Point. I worked for an 80 West Point grad for most of my career, getting me, and she always encouraged me to stay in the reserves, get the retirement, weekends, 2-week tours, etc., month deployments, other deployments. Yeah. And then, David and I cross paths, Tony and I cross paths. It's like, from that other perspective, grads, out there looking to hire, definitely consider, those looking to transition out, whether retirement or otherwise.
Yeah.
Right.
And if I can make one more comment, Mike, reach out to us. If I don't have the network, I'm sure I can connect with somebody else.
Yeah.
That if I can't help you, I will do it, because it's on me. This is my name and my brand and my commitment to everybody here. I want to see, we got amazing people that are doing some awesome stuff. I mean, look at Pratha, what he came out to do. Look at David now working at CrowdStrike. So, we want to help unleash your talent on this side of the house as well. And I'll make another comment later, but that's it. I'll stop. Sorry.
Yeah. No, this is one of the primary reasons the NextGen is here. It's really to get an engagement, amp that engagement up, and get exactly grads helping grads. All right, let's move on here. Tony, we're going to start off with you, bud. Right, so it's going to go right back to you, and then over to Partha, and then David. So, where do you see the profession of cybersecurity going, especially with AI, and what skill sets will be the most valued?
So I can just start with wow, because AI is impacting. I would tell you candidly, and I'll post something that hopefully the moderators can share to everybody. There are 2 posts that folks should take a look at. One is a CEO from NVIDIA, who I worked with before on the innovation front. He made an amazing post and comment about what the thinking of the future is going to value. If you're not thinking in this way of looking at problem sets, you're not going to be relevant. I'll share that, and then a practical example of how that's happening for folks that don't have the kind of technical expertise that we're all fortunate to have, that are just using AI without knowing how to code, without knowing how to do anything. So with that as context, I would tell you, first of all, I would challenge all of us to, instead of saying cyber, I think we should say digital risk, because that's what this is all about at the end of the day. Technology, any new technology that comes out, as great as it is, introduces a new risk. And just because it's a risk doesn't mean you're going to not do it, but you got to understand it. You got to know how to mitigate it, and you got to know how to transfer it. And so I think that expands into other things like privacy, like data sovereignty, which is the big discussion when I presented at the Munich Security Conference a couple weeks ago. That was a huge issue. So these things will change. And then, of course, going back to our buzzword in the Air Force from John Boyd, OODA loop. The OODA loop on these things, it's AI against AI. When I presented recently at the Israeli cyber conference in December, the AI cyber conference, the discussion was not the human in the loop anymore. It was all about how are we setting up the right algorithms, the right agents, and things like that to battle the other agents that are being used. I mean, think about this for all the folks on the line, depending on what your respective roles are. One person now can download a kit and have the power of a nation state. Literally, almost, potentially. I'm not talking about China, perhaps. I'm not talking about the big ones, but second or third tier, we can download these things and behave, at least in the short term, like this. So one of my favorite quotes is, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So we need to change the way we look at cyber from a risk perspective, technology, the people and processes, so that this profession that we talk about can continue to be relevant with us in it. Last point, I promise, and that is the human component. Yes, there's lots of technology, but I'll tell you, and David and Pratha, keep me honest, and you too, Mike, as a CISO, is a lot of the things that have been found out, the malware and some of these other interesting hacks have been human beings that go, just something isn't right here. Something just doesn't make sense. And you got all the great tech stack in the world, the great solutions that are doing their job, but something isn't right. So learn how to listen to that, what I call the spidey sense, to make sure, because that's where you're really going to be valuable, because AI is going to come and do some amazing things. So that's, and David and Partha, keep me honest. Hopefully, this jives with what you guys are seeing as well. Thank you.
Yeah, Partha, what's your take?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, and it's very valuable to have different decades and different kind of class years present themselves, because I think we all have various experiences. Like, I got out at the 5-year mark, right? So like, I was 27, and the positions and jobs that I was going for were fundamentally different than what David and Tony were going for, because they have the experience in their military careers to kind of focus on different types of problem sets, right? So I initially went for an IC position, and then kind of transitioned to more of like this like leadership position, but like influencing a business at like almost like a director of operations kind of level. But at my level, like, I'm at the actual forefront. I'm like fighting every single day. I'm like looking at every single time a new model comes out, like Anthropic released a new model that impacts me. And so then I have to go testing and seeing like, hey, my product has to evolve to keep up. Like, there's entire product categories and startup categories that are eliminated because Anthropic released a new like code scanner, and they're like, an entire investment portfolio was just like decimated, or will be soon decimated, right? So what I'm trying to say here is that the future is going to be humans plus AI. More and more of my customers, also on the networking side, almost all of my customers are actually military people, going back to the trust thing. So that's kind of something that I think we always look at who's our ideal customer. I always reach out to military because they have that initial respect for me, and also like they know that I'm not going to BS them. And also I know that they're going to be forthright with me and being like, yeah, we can do this or we can't do this, right? But what we're seeing is that there's a rejection of pure AI plays. So it's actually always wanting humans plus AIs kind of as a joint capability, and it's like more of an augment versus a replacement. But that also just means that expectations for humans are going up. Like, a single person with a fleet of AI agents can do as much as maybe like 5 people. So even though it's not completely like about job elimination, it's about job opportunity reduction here, right? And with that comes every single level. The expectations are so much higher than they were 2 years ago. Like, an entry-level position now, it's not about, hey, like, tell me what you know about how would you investigate an alert. It's like, how would you use an AI agent to investigate and automate your entire workflow for your day-to-day, so you can go focus on harder problems. Like, my CISO friends and everything are now having agentic AI as part of the interview process. And so you now have to be familiar enough with that, right? But the challenge also comes is that you have to be smarter than like these agentic frameworks and these LLMs and stuff. So if you're using ChatGPT to go and write a, I don't know, like OPR, more than ChatGPT to say, hey, you got it wrong. Like, I need you to fix this. But in the same way, when you're automating workflows, you need to know when the AI gets it wrong, which means domain expertise is incredibly valuable. And being able to kind of parse through that and knowing what the limitations of AI as well as the strengths are in terms of like operationalizing your own kind of workflows. I can go on a lot about that, but I would love to kind of, that's like from me as a startup co-founder perspective, which is very, very like niche compared to like maybe some of the other roles of bigger companies.
All right, David.
I have a story. So while I was teaching at the academy, I became friends with an ACM Turing Award winner. ACM is the Association for Computing Machinery, and the Turing Award is the Nobel Prize of Computer Science. So this guy, I asked him outright just a couple years ago, what do your ACM Turing Award pals think about AI? And he said, well, I'll tell you this. I asked one guy what he thought about it, and he said AI is an existential threat. Humanity is doomed. I asked the other guy, and he's like, no, it's not going to change anything. So here you have like two of the leading minds in computer science disagreeing on what the ultimate fate of AI is going to be. And I hope that it gave me comfort, and I hope it gives you comfort in that nobody has the answer, and that any conclusive answer is just an ideology. It's just a belief. There's no actual hard science to prove that it's going to go one way or the other. I tend to believe what Tony and Parther were saying, that AI is not going to replace humans en masse, but humans will work with AI, right? AI is going to accelerate things. It's going to scale up what humans can do. It's going to cover more ground. Maybe AI focuses more on the noisy things, and humans can focus more on the exquisite, nuanced, intuition-based things. Maybe humans are more creative. There's lots of infinite space to cover, and I think humans have a claim to a really big part of it.
That's great. It's great. I'll just add, I thought one of you guys might bring it up, but the checking in the Wall Street Journal and other things with the Iranian attack against Stryker, being a part of Johnson & Johnson since 2011, and since spinning out into their consumer brands now, Kenvue. We have connected medical devices. Corporations have connected digital surgical systems that are out there, with working on folks, life support, you name it, different surgical procedures. But Iran just disrupted that from the largest commercial orthopedic manufacturer in the world. And J&J is this company, Pew, which is the second largest, but it's definitely we're seeing it used in warfare much more frequently and accelerate. Go ahead, Tony.
Mike, if I can make a comment, I mean, we saw the targeting that's being AI is leveraging targeting. When I was downrange, I was early adopter for Palantir, and even then, command line and all that stuff, it was pretty powerful then. It's pretty amazing what can be done. So I look at it like having an R2D2 or C3PO. Kind of dates me as well, but it's my support aspect of that. One last comment to your point about startups. It is impact. I mean, the data's out there. For example, Adobe, the market cap of Adobe went down by almost 50%. I used to pay monthly for the whole Adobe suite, and I took time and effort to learn how to use all those tools. There's a lot of education, as we like to say, that goes into using those tools. Now you can go to an agent, as Partha was talking about, type in the right prompt and not have to know how to use any of those tools and get as good, if not better, output. So if you're a software company, depending to the point about the impact, if you're a software company that doesn't have a service component, what's happening with these major platforms is a feature of a software is becoming integrated into their major LLM or their major agent. So that's just reality. It's amazing how quickly that's happening.
Okay, guys, we're at the point in time where we're going to the audience. So question coming in here from Christopher, I think it's Knudsen, class of 2013. So great discussion. I know of two classmates now out of the military for a few years now, who are looking for cyber-related civilian jobs. Where's the best place to send them? Maybe I'll start with David, since we hooked up when you got out. But what would you say to that?
It's gonna be a boring answer, but your network, like whatever that looks like, is if it's on LinkedIn or other social media, or even just like your 5 closest buddies from the academy, like you start asking around, and don't think of it as they have the answer. Think of it as you're accessing their network, and that's how you go into it, right? You start asking, you have an opinion about what you want to do, and you ask them, do you have any ideas on who I should be talking to help me understand better what I could be doing, what I should be doing, and that'll open up a lot more networks to you. But that's like I don't know. I feel like it's like an old guy answer. I want to hear what Partha has to say about that one.
Partha.
Oh boy! Oh my God! You guys are putting me on the spot. I'm gonna make a couple assumptions here, right? So I'm gonna make the assumption that this person or these people did not have a previous cyber background. So they're kind of fresh and they're now pivoting into cyber. When you're trying to make a pivot, there's like, there's two pivots. One, it's going to be like the military to civilian. But if you're already in the civilian sector and everything like that, like then it's going to be the civilian to this new domain or new kind of area and expertise. I 100% agree with David. Reach out to your network to kind of get an understanding of the domain in terms of what jobs are there. In terms of like a very more tactical answer, like not just like a it depends kind of thing, I would say compliance. Like cyber compliance and governance and AI compliance and AI governance is like exploding right now. And I think the military standard like skill set really does a good job of translating over, because compliance is a huge part, is like one, sales enablement. So like a company cannot sell a product in Europe if they're not GDPR compliant, right? Now then it goes back to the amount of work it takes to get GDPR compliant is incredibly high. So how do you then make the business justification, helping people guide through that to say, hey, this is the compliance framework. We have to meet this compliance framework or this happens. But then the other trade-off from an operational standpoint is that the engineers that would then be implementing that framework or making us compliant are then saying, we're not going to ship this product feature that these customers are then buying. So what do? Do we go fix this vulnerability and compliance thing, or do we then go and ship this feature and take the risk? So that kind of calculus is something that I think like a lot of military experienced people would be very good at. And that's why it's also like, I think something that every single company would have to have, and that's not going away anytime soon. So I would, if I was to talk to someone that's brand new to cyber and from the military, I would say like, try to get your foot in the door in the compliance realm. Yeah.
Very good. Tony, this next one's coming to you from my
hey, I know we're on time here, but I do want to make two quick comments. Network is huge on that.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Use your ConOp, use your skills and mission planning that you have in some way or the other, whether it's Air Force or whoever else you're getting it from, and draw a mind map of your network and start, as David mentioned, your closest folks and radiate out. And you can do that. And I'm not a big social media guy for several reasons, but LinkedIn is a good place to start. Although I think it's Facebook for adults. After a while, it's become so ridiculous. Different discussion for a different day, but it's a good place to start. The other point I would say, career fields that you should look at, and to piggyback on the other comments, data sovereignty is going to be significant. The use of data and I'm not talking about data privacy. That's big enough. I'm talking about the sovereignty of data and how it's used in AI and agency of your own data, and that's huge. So don't necessarily just focus on the ops stuff, because a lot of AI is taking care of some of that. Again, you still need humans. And then IoT, third-party risk, the supply chain and all that, especially as we're reshoring or onshoring stuff that we've given away all these years. Anyway, those are my two ads, if they made sense.
Yeah. Let me just put a plug here in for the Long Blue Line portal. And actually, like, that's the purpose of NextGen. It's to help you develop these networks, in this case, and around cyber. But yeah, the NextGen Advisory Council is coming to you with webinars. We're updating. I know Naveer's talked to me quite a few times about how the Long Blue Line portal is being updated. That's an awesome place to find out information. It's just for grads. I remember getting out way back, and there was a database of graduates in all three academies. Long Blue Line is like the modern version of that, and it's actually looking pretty sharp. So I'd ask you to register or check it out. All right, this one's coming from my fellow classmate, Brian Cabot, same squadron, Rev 11. So good to hear or see your question on the screen, Brian. So Tony, with the accelerating pace of AI emergence, how does Brian guide his high school sophomore toward a viable career pathway, particularly in the tech sector? There's a huge population of technically inclined Americans coming up, but they have no practical experience. Where do you see them ending up?
So that's a great question. And it goes back to my favorite quote, right? When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. I think one is we need to change what we think of is education, post-high school education, and what that really means. And I shared a post, I don't know if that's been shared with a broader group or not, on the example, the quote, the way of thinking. I would highly suggest that you talk to your son, to think in the way that is going to be, and I used a quote that was used there in a special ops where we talked about thinking around corners. You know how to look around corners. You know where the puck is going, and you can exercise. You can start looking at that, and then there are a lot of non-sexy things, by the way, that are going to get disrupted tremendously. Even things like plumbing and HVAC and electrical that are going to require technical skills and insights. I mean, just with all the data centers, I was on with a current administration call regarding AI and how we're going to get data centers up and running, and we're going to leverage energy. The infrastructure requirements, the kinds of skills to build all those data centers, the compliance aspect with environmental, but at the same time, the economic component where it's not going to raise our power bills, and it's going to be passed on to the big 7 or 8, whoever they are at that time. So I would say start with having them. One, they have to, back to Protha's point, they have to learn about AI. Does that mean you need to learn everything about how to put together a chip or an LLM or whatever? No, but you can definitely, the information's out there for free. I mean, you don't have to go to MIT or Cal or Michigan or anybody. You can get all this information. You may not get the right certificate. Nobody cares about that stuff anymore, by the way. That's the other thing. Certificates anybody can get those. It's about the wisdom and knowledge you can do, and then start applying those for silly things. Just try and leverage those tools in your everyday life. That would be my suggestion. But really anchor in on those 2 posts that I shared. One from Jang and the other one from the use of the AI.
Nice, Tony. David, I know you got a couple beautiful kids. How are you guiding them as it relates to cyber or tech?
Yeah, I've got 3 kids in high school right now, and some of them might get interested in tech. And going back to what I said about is AI an existential threat or not, I think there's a bright future in people in tech if you have the ability to solve problems and think and find some intuition in the space. So if you're in tech, it may be less incumbent upon you to understand the deep technical details of what it is you're working with, and more important that you understand the strengths and limitations of the tech, because the humans fill in the gaps. So yeah, it depends. I guess it depends on how deep technical you want to go. Maybe some of that gets swallowed up by AI, but if it comes to like higher level problem solving, like where do I point this tech next, that's the kind of thinking we need. And I think there's a infinite space there.
I have a son who went on to be an MIS major, now working in cyber for Deloitte. He's doing well. But my other child, Katie, she's the creative-minded artist type. So you're not gonna, some people are just wired, another way, which is so cool and makes us all special. But all right, folks, we're at the 3rd part of our discussion today, which is the rapid fire round. So 1 sentence each. Tony, 2 sentences for you, because I know 1 sentence is tough. But let's get started here. 1 certification, habit, or learning investment worth making early. Partha, we'll start with you.
I think it's a piggyback on the last question as well. Is like, I know this is maybe a cop-out answer, but honestly, software engineering and computer science, like how to code. You will never regret learning how to code in this emerging market. So I would say that one. That's probably had the most impact on my life.
Awesome. Tony.
Yeah, so I would say, Partha, you said this earlier on, communication, learning communication. And by the way, coding is communication. I look at, I learned how to code and I speak several languages. I look at that. You got to know how to have a computer language. Even if you never use it, it enables you to think differently.
David.
I'd say nonfiction audiobooks on how to grow a business or on leadership from non-military authors.
Oh man, that's good stuff. I would throw in join the 5 a.m. club. Get up early, prep yourself for the day, and get on with it, being prepared. All right, David, this one's coming to you first here. Best advice you received during transition into the civilian sector?
Best advice I got was maximize optionality. Your first job out the door is not going to be your last job. So pick a job that sets you up well for the next one. That doesn't mean you have to be dishonest about going into it. It just means if you have options, make them one that gives you the most options. That was way more than one sentence. Sorry.
That's okay. Tony, back over to you.
Yeah, it's basically around and being an entrepreneur and having several companies. It's if you're not failing, you're not trying. You know, be brave enough to fail and learn from those failures.
100%, 100%. Partha.
Similar to David, I would say optimize for the role and not the compensation. I think the first role out of the military has a huge impact on defining the next one and the next one and the next one. Because future employers, if you find jobs without necessarily leveraging the network, future employers will look at your first job out of the military as like defining kind of the market of where you are. Now, can you pivot? Yes, but I'm just saying it has a huge impact when you have like that first job.
Yeah, I'm going to share a little perspective too, a little different than what you guys said. I had to get off active duty for a child with a disability. It's kind of like sometimes life will throw you a curveball, and you got to make. So nobody told me what to do, but when I got my civilian job, my boss was like, "Stay in the reserves. You didn't want to get out. You can still do it." So if life throws you a curveball like that, where you have to find yourself getting off activity, the reserves, the Guard are great options to continue your career. It served me well. I retired, and just another piece of advice. It doesn't have to be just separate and done. You can move into another area. Okay, worst advice you received, Tony. Let's start with you.
The worst advice was there's some, hey, you got all these clearances and clearances and all this other interesting stuff. There's some great contractors out there you can work for. And
Nice,
it's not that it's bad that it's bad to go work for contractors. Is that I look at the opportunity to make the transition as being able to step back and redefine yourself, and that's it's the easy button to press to go work for a contractor. You're just flipping your shingle, putting on taking off one cheap suit and putting up another one. Maybe no core frames in this case, but the point is it's easier. And in that environment, good or bad, it's still very much that hierarchical environment, which again, the way things are moving these days, you got to disrupt that. So that was the worst advice.
Partha, over to you.
Yeah, so I acknowledge the privilege that I had when I got out, which was I didn't have any debt, I didn't have any dependents. I was basically able to do whatever I wanted, so I can take more risks. So I want to first preface what I'm about to say with that privilege. But the worst advice, in my opinion, was, hey, settle for an attainable job first and find your ideal job later. And like when I got out, I went to like Breakline, which was like one of the when at the time was like women, minorities, veterans, to kind of help them pivot into tech. And they were a fantastic resource for me specifically, but they also are a business. So I understand that their kind of purpose is to kind of land positions quickly. I know this is longer than one sentence, I apologize. But they kind of directed to me towards go get like the low hanging fruit jobs, get the first pivot, and then you can go find it. And I was like, nah, I'm gonna grind and put the hours in and put the prep in to kind of get the job that I wanted, and I'm not gonna take anything less. But I had the means to go do that.
Excellent. David, over to you.
Yeah, you're seeing a theme here. It's back to like optionality, right? And having some conviction about what you want. It's funny, Tony, what I wrote was the worst advice was keep your clearance. For me, that was not good advice because it just narrowed my worldview, right? It just narrowed my worldview to only these options. And it took someone else saying, what about all these other things, that actually opened it back up. So that piece of advice is not bad advice, but depending on how much optionality you want, it could be.
Nice. All right, guys. Partha, we're coming to you first here. One skill you wish the Academy emphasized more for cyber careers.
I think David and Tony are gonna love my answer here. I think the concept of like risk and like business impact and trade-offs, like I don't think we talk about it formally in like a scientific or methodical kind of way. Like for example, cyber is not like I build a cyber product and I sell cybersecurity, obviously, but cyber is never the primary business driver. It is a cost center. and it's about risk management. It's a support function. And so it's important not to forget that an investment in cyber does not necessarily mean that the business is going to be profitable. So I think risk and concept of risk management is something that I think like the Academy, I wish they had emphasized a little bit more as part of the technical skills as well.
All right, David, over to you this time.
I was going to say soft skills. Soft skills are a superpower in cyber, but I kind of want to change my answer to what Partha said. Like judgment calls and trade-offs, like how do you actually think about it, and it's data backed with real analytical skill. That's huge. That's useful for a lot of domains, not just cyber.
Awesome. Tony.
So I was going to say ditto, but to make up for the long answers I gave in the other ones, but I'm going to go ahead and tread a little bit beyond that. You're absolutely, Partha and David are absolutely correct. And it's in the fuzzy stuff though, the risk of the gray area that you have to make a decision, because ultimately, on our side, I had to make life and death decisions on the special ops side, and we're not making life and death decisions per se, but I would say we are potentially, because we're all stakeholders of a digital economy, right? And there are bad actors out there trying to put the bicycle pump in the tire to bring us down because we depend on this. So in one sense, if you're talking medical devices, if you're talking critical infrastructure, people will get impacted. So it's being able to think differently and take risk and know how to mitigate or transfer those.
Excellent. Excellent. We're starting with you, Tony, for this last one. Remembering way back when you were a 4 degree, what would your 4 degree self be proud of today?
I think it's, I heard this word before. I think I may have used it. It's resilience. Mike, you shared, you were, trustful enough to share that your situation with your child and how you had to think about things differently on that. Life is a humbling event to all of us. And if those of us who don't get humbled early, it happens and we all get humbled. So it's being able to be resilient and all the stuff we're telling you, being able to then translate it to your particular case. So I think that would be a case is consciously saying being resilient versus just naturally being it.
David, your 4 degree self, what would your 4 degree self say to you that it was most proud of today?
I think my 4 degree self would be proud that I kept my innate love of people, and I used formal leadership training to amplify that love instead of replace it.
I swore you were going to say like growing your hair out.
That's the second thing on the list.
I hope I didn't just take Partha's answer right there. Partha, how about you? Close it out.
You took that would be my answer, Mike. You kind of took it away because I did have hair back in my, the beard and the long hair, but that was with different days.
I mean, I think I can score higher in a PFT now than I could back at the account as a 4 degree, so I'd probably say that. But like, in a more realistic kind of sense, I mean, I somehow managed to convince a VC to give me money to build whatever I wanted, right? And so I never thought I'd be a co-founder of a venture-backed startup. Most startups fail, and I fully know that. But like every day I get to do this, it's been like pretty. It's just a lot of privilege, and I'm pretty proud of the opportunity that I have. So yeah.
All right, guys, that's awesome. Awesome. Let's see here. Okay. Well, so thank you so much to each one of you. Y'all, we covered 4 decades here, 80s, 90s, what I understand are called the aughts and the tens. So just a super, super thank you to all of our panelists for their candor, for their perspective, and to all of you for investing your time and listening. One of the most powerful aspects of the long blue line is that we continue to learn from each other long after graduation. We hope this session offered clarity, confidence, and connection as you navigate your own path. This is just the beginning of the NextGen Present series. We look forward to continuing these conversations together.
Thanks, guys.